Broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi with Sagarika Ghosh.
Hi there, Eid Mubarak to you. The Supreme Court has come down heavily on the government for endlessly sitting on mercy petitions. Either hang death row prisoners, fast or commute their death sentences to life imprisonment, the Supreme Court tells the government. But do not use human beings as chattels and pawns in a political game. And as far as life imprisonment is concerned, today Nalini, serving a life term in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case, went on a fast to demand that she be set free immediately. That brings us to our question of the day tonight. The Supreme Court for quick disposal of mercy pleas. Is it time to end capital punishment if the government simply cannot take a decision on whether to hang or not? Type QTD space Y for yes, QTD space N for no, SMS to 51818. You can also vote online and express an opinion on IBNlive.com. You can also join us on Twitter and send in your tweets on what you think about this question. We are online as well as coming to you live. And facing the nation tonight, we have Abhishek Singhvi, MP and spokesperson of the Congress Party, will be joining us. We have Harsh Mandar, social activist. We also have Mahesh Jetmalani, senior lawyer and BJP member, joining us from Mumbai. Let's get into the top story first on Face the Nation. With the Supreme Court asking the government to decide fast on mercy petitions, what does this mean for the Afzal Guru case? Ashok Bagaria reports.
Afzal Guru convicted in the Parliament attack case and sentenced to death on August 4, 2005. Murugan Shantan Perarivalan convicted in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case and sentenced to death in July 1999. 3 associates of Veerappan are also on death row since January 1993. All these and 19 others have been on the death row for years, but the executions are yet to take place, as their mercy petitions are still pending with the President of India. But decades have gone by, and the President of India, who acts on the advice of the government, is yet to take a final call in these matters. However, in a rare instance, the Supreme Court of India, in a stinging indictment, has asked the government to quickly dispose of mercy pleas of prisoners sentenced to death and not use them as pawns in furthering some larger political or government policy. But the government and human rights activists have a different take on the issue.
We have a very complex, in fact slow, dilatory, deliberative process which takes a long time to come to the conclusion whether a death penalty should be carried out or not.
After these people on death row and continuing them in that position costs a him that amounts to cruel and inhuman punishment, and it becomes unconstitutional.
After these observations by the Supreme Court, the government will find it extremely difficult to defend itself, as it has in the past been accused of indulging in the vote bank politics while deciding on mercy petitions. In New Delhi with Ashok Bagaria, Leader Raghav.
Meanwhile, set me free, says Nalini, serving a life term for the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Today she began a fast in the Vellore jail to say she has completed 18 years and should now be released prematurely. She has demanded the immediate formation of a board to look into the release of life-term convicts. Let's get to the initial results now of our SMS poll. The Supreme Court asked for quick disposal of mercy petitions from the government. Is it time to end capital punishment? What are you telling us at the start of the show? 25% there are saying yes. 75% there are saying no. There's a huge majority there saying no, this is not the time to abolish capital punishment. Let's get straight into crossfire on Face the Nation. Mahesh Jetmalani, if the government cannot decide on the death sentence, if Afzal Guru is such a political hot potato that the government, even after the sentence was passed in 2006, cannot decide, then why not simply, like all the countries of the European Union, do away with the death penalty?
Well, I don't think the government wants to do away with the death penalty. It wants to have that option. Don't forget, it was the same Congress government that very expeditiously decided Kehar Singh's mercy petition in the assassination case of Mrs. Gandhi. His mercy petition was dealt with swiftly, expeditiously, and he was hung. So I don't think the government really want to keep this option, but it's a tragedy. And by the way, it was in 2006 when the Supreme Court finally pronounced Afzal Guru as guilty. It was 2005. Right. It's been 4 years now, and it's a travesty of justice. It's a complete shame, both from the accused point of view, the prosecution's point of view, and indeed society's point of view, that this hanging sword of Damocles should be kept for such a long time over the head of the accused.
Mr. Abhishek, Manu Singhvi, you know, there's a bad Ajit joke which says liquid oxygen mein maar do. Oxygen liquid marne nahi dega, liquid jeene nahi dega, oxygen marne nahi dega. You know, it's the same sort of thing that you're doing with Afzal Guru. Why not put the man out of his misery and decide one way or the other whether to hang or in fact whether to commute it into a life imprisonment sentence?
I think this is the whole problem with this debate. Whenever this debate is thrown up by a judgment here or a comment there, you reduce it to a one-liner on Afzal Guru. Just put things in perspective, Sagarika. There are 24 people at last count in May 2009 on death row. The earliest of them was convicted in 1987, and the Supreme Court confirmed his death sentence in 1998. There are 24 of them till May 09, like that. They include Rajiv Gandhi's killers. Number 22 in that list of 24 is Afzal Guru. Now, let's stop playing politics. I think it's a very real issue. All governments, certainly the NDA and to an extent the Congress government subsequently, there has been a delay. Now, what are the reasons? Part of the reason is there have been presidents of India who have had an approach that death penalty should not be implemented. There was a period when hardly any death penalty was implemented because of presidential pendency. But equally, don't play politics, because the NDA is repeatedly saying what? It is saying that pluck out Afzal Guru at number 22, execute him, forget about the entire list pending of 24, now probably 28. That's the politics of it. Maybe because
but the point is, isn't the government basically sitting on all these mercy petitions because of Afzal Guru? It's Afzal Guru that is holding up all these mercy petitions. You can't decide on any of them. Because if you do, there will be a public outcry. And they'll say, why aren't you deciding on Afzal Guru?
That's a very important question. There's a very important question you are raising, and that's precisely the point. Your question illustrates is exactly the opposite. Perhaps Afzal Guru is not being dealt with because of a pendency of 22 cases prior to him. Right through, in fact, the earliest one of them starts with the Supreme Court confirmation in 1998, the year the NDA started. The chart is presented by me personally in the Rajya Sabha in Parliament. Now that chart has Rajiv Gandhi's killers. All of them right through 98 to 2004 were not moved at all. But I'm not doing politics on this. What I'm saying is, there are issues to be addressed. I think the time has come.
But the politics is overwhelming. The politics is overwhelming. You know, it's a political hot potato. You know how Modi used it in the 2007 assembly elections. But let me get in Harsh Mandar here. Let me get in Harsh Mandar here. Harsh Mandar, you know, there clearly is no moral consensus on the death penalty. There are abolitionists, there are anti-abolitionists. Should a country like India, where the death penalty is such a political hot potato, as it is in the case of Afzal Guru, should we in fact just abolish the death penalty and just stick to life imprisonment?
I think there's, you know, I agree very much with Abhishek that it's a question that, you know, precedes Afzal Guru and is well beyond that individual case. It's a much bigger ethical question. I think it's, you know, a test of a civilized society is how it treats its most, you know, its worst transgressors. It's also, you know, about whether our purpose is revenge. Is society trying to take revenge, or is it trying to deter? And if it is trying to deter further crime, then there's evidence from all over the world that capital punishment never has, you know, has had an impact on less crime or less heinous crime than when there is no capital punishment. So I think India should take a humane, civilized view, follow much of the rest of the world, and separate it from the specifics of a particular case.
But you know, Harsh Mandar, the question could be raised, and it is argued that if you only have life imprisonment, then you could have situations like Nalini, who today is now demanding the release, her premature release after she served 18 years. You could have hardened criminals who are sentenced to life imprisonment, who are walking free because of parole, because of remissions, who are not actually getting the punishment they deserve because of the loopholes in the law and in life imprisonment.
See, life imprisonment can be, I mean, I think that's been something that needs to be carefully defined. What do we mean, the entire life, or do we mean a certain period of years? But I think that there is also the question of the fallibility of judgment itself. I mean, we have seen
That's the big point.
instances where
Right.
somebody has been hanged and you made a mistake. And finally, I think there's also the retrievability of a human being. I mean, I think that, you know, the people closest to most badly affected by Nalini's case have actually gone out and spoken of forgiveness. And I think there are many ethical issues around.
Mahesh Jethmalani, that's the
a
point,
debate of
isn't
this
it? I
kind.
mean, as it said, there is no grass that grows under the gallows. You simply cannot remove that slight element of doubt, that slight element of what is the courts call the scintilla of doubt. Therefore, you cannot award death since it is precisely so irreversible. So it is actually, in fact, not civilized to hand out death because that is not actually just punishment.
Well, Sagarika, let me tell you that doesn't seem to be the argument of the government anyway. The government wants to, if that was the case, then the government should be bold enough to say, we are scrapping, because of this scintilla of doubt phenomenon, we are scrapping the death penalty altogether. But the government is not saying that. They've retained the death penalty on the statute books. Now, let me get
a response.
Let me give it both.
Mahesh, just hold your horses. Let me get a response in from Abhishek Manu Singhvi quickly.
Yeah.
Abhishek Manu Singhvi, because of scintilla of doubt, why don't you say you'll abolish the death penalty?
Now you're on another important issue, Sagarika, the whole issue of abolition versus retention. I think there are a lot of good arguments on both sides. The abolitionists have a point.
Where do you
fallibility,
stand?
etc.
Where do you stand, if I may ask you?
The retentionists, now I'll tell you, I'm just answering that. I think India has struck the right balance, and I support the current law, which is not abolitionist, but not retentionist simpliciter. It says retain death penalty, but only in the rarest of rare cases. And although it's not a perfect test, I think the residual power to award death penalty in that rarest of rare, which I would define in extreme form, is a good balance
But let me
for
put a-
retribution of society as also fallibility. So you got the balance right.
Mahesh, you want to come in here?
Yes, I'd like to come in here. You know, the fact of the matter is that, first of all, we're talking about mercy petitions now. As far as mercy petitions are concerned, we'll come to the viability of the death sentence later on. As far as mercy petitions are concerned, I'm sure Abhishek Singhvi will agree with me that 4 years for any mercy petition is inordinate delay. Nobody can say that if there are 22 mercy petitions before Afzal Gurus, kindly dispose them off. And by the way, this Congress government doesn't seem to know the law. In 1984, the Supreme Court has said that all mercy petitions should be disposed of as a matter of self-discipline by the President under Article 72 within the period of 3 months. So I don't know what they are talking about, 22 petitions pending. Somebody has seriously missed the law over here. As far as the abolition question is concerned, Sagarika, for terrorism, every argument which deals with punishment works against the terrorist. First of all, terrorists can't be reformed. You know that they can even withstand waterboarding torture. So there's no question of punishment reforming them. The fallibility argument in any case doesn't apply because, as I said, the government keeps it on the statute books. Is still keeping the death penalty on the statute books. In any case, it's as bad to have life imprisonment where there's a scintilla of doubt as a death penalty. In fact, terrorists, for instance, prefer the death penalty.
Okay,
There's a very strong argument. Just let me finish there. There's a very strong argument about the utilitarian aspect of the death penalty where terrorists are concerned. You know what happened in 1999? Kandahar took place. There was a rescue operation because you had a terrorist called Masood Azhar who was detained since 1994 to 1999. His trial hadn't started. His sentence hadn't taken place. The longer you keep terrorists in jail in this country, the larger the chance of a hostage exchange situation. On pure utilitarian grounds, terrorism must be dealt with by death penalties.
Okay, those are the very strong arguments in favor of death penalty. We'll come back and get comments in from our other panelists and ask what happens if the Kasab case too ends up in a clemency or a mercy petition. What happens there to the debate on the death penalty? Let's take a short break and come back with lots more. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We're discussing the question. The Supreme Court has said that the government must quickly dispose of all mercy petitions because it is a living hell for those who are on death row and who still don't know what's going to happen to their mercy petitions. Is it time to end capital punishment? Then we're asking if the government simply cannot decide whether it should hang or should not. Harsh Mandar, let me get you to respond to what Mahesh Jethmalani was saying, which is that what if Ajmal Kasab, whose trial is going on now, again goes from appeal to appeal and goes from court to court and ends in a mercy petition. then is there not an argument to say that for terrorist crimes, for such heinous crimes, for attacking parliament, for attacking people in Mumbai, for plots to assassinate heads of state, there should be death penalty in a country like India?
See, I mean, I profoundly disagree. But, firstly, what is terrorism and, mass violence, for instance. You had you've had the carnage in Gujarat, for instance. You've had Bhagalpur, you've had the Sikh riots. How is it, how is one crime more heinous than the other?
That's a good point.
So I think that, I think that all crimes, where politics has been used, need to be dealt with in the same way. Second, it's one step away to justify capital punishment because you cannot use normal systems of law, and then you justify encounter killings, torture, and so on and so forth. But the most important thing I think really is that history has shown that terrorism is never crushed by the brute force of the state. Terrorism is fostered on a sense of injustice, and it is that injustice that sense of injustice that has to be addressed, and the support for terrorism will evaporate, and in that, and it's only a humane, civilized society bound by the rule of law that is the most effective in controlling
Mahesh Jethmalani, how do you decide what is a heinous crime is the question. What about the burning of Graham Staines? Is that not a heinous crime? The Supreme Court gave death sentence to Afzal Guru, saying because of the collective conscience of the nation demands, therefore he must be awarded death sentence even though the evidence is circumstantial, even though there is no evidence he's part of any banned organized. So how do you decide which is a heinous crime and which deserves a death sentence?
Surely, it's not for you, me, Mr. Mandar or Mr. Singhvi to decide this question. The fact of the matter is, Parliament in its wisdom has already decided which offences will attract the death penalty and which will not attract the death penalty. Now, if anybody has a grievance, you should be taking it to Parliament. So, as long as these offences attract the death penalty, it should be imposed. Now, Mr. Mandar says that history has shown us. I don't think, in fact, in India, the experience is quite the contrary, and Mr. Mandar should realize that. We have never sentenced any terrorist given the death sentence to any terrorist since Kehar Singh assassinated Mrs. Gandhi, if Kehar Singh could be called a terrorist. Nobody has been given, and because of that, terrorism in this country has proliferated. There's been no deterrent aspect. So I don't know what historical experience he's been living through. I have a country, in Bombay alone, we've had 21 terrorist incidents, and nobody has been given the death sentence.
Mr. Mandar, maybe terrorism would be less in India if we had the death penalty.
They may not have been the death penalty, but we've used encounter killings, we've used abandoning the rule of law in relation to terrorists, and there has been the outrage is equally that there has nobody been punished yet for the 1984 carnage, and I think that, for instance, is the source of a huge amount of the kind of dissatisfaction that finally leads to people taking up arms. So I think that there is no shortcut to justice and rule of law being followed impartially.
Okay, so the death penalty only breeds a violent state. But Abhishek, Manu Singhvi, now how long is the Afzal Guru case going to wait? It's a political metaphor. It clearly shows that the government knows this is a political hot potato. It can't act on the Afzal Guru case. Therefore, it's just buying time as a tactical device to keep it going. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has made a stinging denunciation of you, saying you're using these people as pawns and political chattel, and that's exactly what you're doing.
We're back to square one. We're reducing the entire debate to the Afzal Guru line. First of all, I have said repeatedly that there is no question death penalty is the law of the land, but it has to be in the rarest of rare cases. Where it is imposed by adjudication, it has to be carried out.
What if the Ajmal Kasab case? What if the Ajmal Kasab case ends in a clemency petition?
Let me complete. First of all, we can't speculate. Of course, it will end if it ends into a death penalty, it may well end into a clemency petition, in which case, according to the procedures established, it will be decided.
So will that then again be another Afzal Guru?
Nobody is suggesting, no, the point is it's not to be suggested that all the people on death row are going to be released. On the contrary, the judgment of the Supreme Court now, in a sense, is given a new reason or an argument to those who've been there from 98 onwards, that they should now seek a fresh clemency on the ground of very long incarceration under death penalty, which is going to be a problem. But according to me, delay of an excessive kind, irrespective of political color or government, has to be eliminated. The Home Ministry is seized of the matter, things are moving faster, and I can tell you that so long as the law of the land is death penalty, certainly we are not arguing for non-imposition on people like Kasab if he is so given by a court, or an Afzal Guru. However, there have been periods when the President, remember the President alone decides this, and the Presidents in the past have decided not to implement or impose, and there's been a problem. And that's why there's been, if I may call the crude word, arrears.
No, but Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani is suggesting, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani is suggesting that by doing this and by seeking refuge in the minutiae of the law and by seeking refuge in all kinds of strategic interpretations of the law, you're basically sending out the signal that this is a government that simply isn't serious about bringing terrorists to justice.
Well, that's the point. The decision or the minutiae, as you put it, is not of the government in many of the cases. If you see the chart, there has been a chart which shows that for long periods the presidents have not decided either way to either commute or to implement the death penalty. That's the reality of it. The government is in a sense been helpless. Now that period has passed and it has given those very convicts a fresh lease of life in a sense by judgments like the recent one, under which they will now be
so the government is helpless. Mahesh Jethmalani, is the Supreme Court right to take the government to task? The government, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi is saying, is helpless.
The government is not helpless at all. The president acts in these matters on the advice of the government, let me tell you. So it's not that this is some independent discretion of the president. The government certainly has an advisory role. It's rubbish to say that each president has had a different view on the death penalty. This is the first time I'm hearing such an argument raised. Now the present government is tossing the blame in the court of previous presidents. That's incredible.
Okay, just a sec, Tony.
Just 1 minute.
Go ahead.
1 minute, Sagarika. Perhaps Mr. Jethmalani should know that the consistent recommendation in many of these 24 cases by the government is to implement the death penalty. But perhaps he also doesn't know that a
I'm certainly not aware. I'm not privy to that.
I will not take the name. I will not take the name. Decided not to sign the file for implementing the death penalty, which is why there was a period of 5 years, you will notice, when no file was decided on the death penalty issue.
Okay.
Now that was a philosophy, a decision, a view of the president.
All these esoteric matters which only Mr. Singhvi is party to, I can't join issue with that.
Right, well, we're going to have to, we're completely out of time, unfortunately. Clearly, this debate really is nowhere near resolution. The government insisting it's helpless. Mr. Jethmalani saying, in fact, the government is stalling. Mr. Harsh Mandar saying capital punishment is not suited to a civilized system of law and order. Mahesh Jethmalani, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, Harsh Mandar, thanks very much indeed for joining us. What are you telling us? What is your verdict, in fact? Should the death penalty be abolished? The Supreme Court has said mercy petitions have to be quickly disposed of. 27 yes, 73% no. There's a big majority out there saying India should not abolish the death penalty. That's the consensus coming out from our SMS poll. Thanks for watching Face the Nation.
Do you love your family? Do you protect them from dust and germs? Sensitive vision.
What to do?
With advanced E-ion air purifying system and patrol sensor detects even the minute particles, releases active E-ions and captures them unlike any other AC.
Who you gonna call? Ideas for life.
Through adventure, we explore the world. Through teamwork, we overcome challenges. We rule the waves, excel underwater, soar high in the sky. We are men in white, warriors of the sea. If you want to experience the thrills, come join the Indian Navy and live your dreams.
Tata Motors presents the 9 days 9 cars free festive offer. Buy any Tata car this Navratri and stand a chance to get your car free, plus assured cash benefits of up to Rs 50,000.